Good evening, all of you in India, and good morning to our participants from the USA. Welcome to our webinar series of the Global Links Impact Investment Forum. As many of you have already been with us over the last few weeks, we welcome you again to our Friday 6 p.m. webinar. And today it is just not one of us, it is three of us together to share our stories from the field on impact investment. To start with, I would like to introduce to you Mr. Anuj Sharma, a financial expert with degrees from India and Harvard. He is the founder and CEO of Alcisar Impact. With a professional experience of more than two decades in international structuring, impact investing, transaction advisory, blended finance, and legal strategy, Anuj is a well-known name in impact investing and social enterprise landscape the world over. He has worked in 15 countries globally, and in the year 2008, he founded ASCO, which is now restructured legal entity, Alcisar Impact. In the last 12 years, Alcisar Impact has emerged as South Asia's leading transaction advisory firm in impact investing and social enterprise. They work in the intersection space of finance, regulation, legal, and impact investments, and has mobilized more than 0.65 billion US dollars in this arena. At Alcisar Impact that Anuj founded, he leads a team of 26 professionals, including lawyers, CAs, MBAs, and Reserve Bank professionals. Anuj was instrumental in structuring India's first privately placed masala bond for a social enterprise for a US foundation, and is active in doing varied other path-breaking blended finance transactions. Anuj is a director in select social entities, including remote sensing technology startup focused on agriculture and forestry, an electric mobility startup, deep tech startup focused on environment and sustainability, among many others. He's an angel investor in select social startups too. He is visiting faculty in Tata Institute of Social Sciences, a prestigious center for social entrepreneurship in India. Anuj has conducted many workshops for impact investors, social enterprise, and was a speaker in different conferences the world over. We are honored in GLIIF to have Anuj with us. This evening and this morning, we have with us John H. Caron. John Caron received an MBA in marketing from New York University's Stern School of Business, as well as a master's degree in American politics from New York University's School of Politics. He earned a BA in political science from Colorado College. John has had a distinguished career in the hospitality and consumer packaged goods industries. Most recently, he was president of Olive Garden and a member of Darden Restaurants' executive and operating teams. Prior to Darden, John was with Unilever in a number of senior marketing roles in both North America and Europe as VP and General Managers in Beverages Lipton, North America. Currently, John is active on several boards of innovative early stage companies. He is the lead director, chairman of Tijuana Flats, a private equity-owned fast casual restaurant concept. An independent director in IZEA, a NASDAQ-listed company, and also an independent director on the board of Thrive Frozen Nutrition. John is vice president of Entrepreneurs in Action, a Florida benefit corporation which serves as a laboratory for new ideas and solutions for the greater good of the Central Florida community. He's also the manager of Entrepreneurs in Action Social Enterprise Fund, which is designated to provide startup and early stage investments in for-profit and not-for-profit social enterprises. John is also a board member of Venvelo, a Central Florida early-stage venture fund. We are honored and proud that John has been with us at this discussion with Dr. Conway as well as with Anuj for this evening. Dr. Mary Conway Dato-on, who is moderating the conversation today, is part of the core team of the Global Links Impact Investment Forum. And as you will know from her, from my explanation about her, is that she is the, I would say, the mother figure of Global Links as an umbrella. Dr. Mary Conway Dato-on is a Fulbright scholar and a George D. and Harriet W. Cornell Chaired Professor of International Business and Social Entrepreneurship at Crummer Graduate School of Business, Rollins College, Florida. As the inaugural faculty director for the Rollins College Social Innovation and Entrepreneurship Hub, Dr. Conway Dato-on served as the change leader for the Ashoka U Changemaker designation. In 2013-14, she received a Fulbright Garcia Robles Scholarship to study social entrepreneurship in Mexico, resulting in the 2018 publication of her book, Shaping Social Entrepreneurship in Mexico, to augment her strong publication record. She was part of the core team that developed the Global Links program, for which she serves as the faculty director. Dr. Conway has led several rounds of Global Links programs in Iran, India, and Brazil, continuing the Global Links mission in India, as she had been part of the Alumni Connect, the Chain of Change program, and now with GLIIF. Besides that, Dr. Conway has actively engaged with the Indian community and traveled to various parts of India. Additionally, she is involved with local and international community to advance and disseminate knowledge on social entrepreneurship, marketing, and cross-cultural marketing issues. So over to Dr. Conway to have a lively conversation between John and Anuj for our very excited audience here in Calcutta.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Banerjee. And you can tell that I'm very humbled to be with the amazing background, right, that Anuj and John bring. So I appreciate you sharing that, because it helps a little bit to gain the perspective of where we're coming from. And just to remind our audience, John and I are located in Central Florida in the beautiful Winter Park, which you see behind me, Winter Park, Florida. And that's the connection that you see a lot of John's work happening here in Orlando. So good morning, John, and welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning to all.
Thank you.
And good evening to all as well.
Yes, exactly. And good evening, Anuj.
Good evening. And I'm right now at Srinagar, which is in the northern India part.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. So what we're going to do today is, Anuj and John, as you know, we've had a few questions that have come in from our team here at GLIIF, and also from some previous participants in other of our webinars, really to try to understand your perspective operating impact investment in the field. So we've had a really good overview from a professor at Crummer, Korai Simsak, about what is the different elements of impact investing. And now we really want to know kind of what it's like to work with the entrepreneurs and to work with the investors in the field. So thanks for taking time to do that. I know we only have an hour of your time, so let me jump right in, if I can, John, by asking you a question.
Certainly.
Can you let us know kind of how you got started in impact investing? What were your influences that led you to think beyond financial returns toward a consideration of social and environmental returns in your investment decisions?
You know, I think there always needs to be a catalyst within a community that drives that kind of thinking. I'll step back a little. I think Unilever, and which obviously has a great presence in India, and Darden Restaurants, which is a large operator of restaurants in the United States, both were obviously huge public companies, However, both had a lot of initiatives that you could characterize as social enterprise-like. So they had a natural bent towards that. When I retired from Darden, one of the groups I reached out to right away, because I admired in Central Florida, was the Central Florida Foundation. And basically, they steward philanthropic dollars on behalf of individuals and families, nonprofits, and they also foster collaboration and fuel ideas and spirit innovation. And so they're really a change dynamic in Central Florida, and I was very attracted to them. Through that, Rally, which is the social enterprise accelerator we'll talk about a little later, and Entrepreneurs in Action grew out of the Central Florida Foundation initiative. And so my involvement with that really dynamic group that are really trying to solve some of society's intractable problems was what influenced me and brought it there. You know, the bottom line is it's a challenge. And it's really difficult problems to solve, and so that attracted me. But Central Florida Foundation was really the catalyst of that.
Great, thank you, John. That's really helpful for us to see the connection and the importance and the role of enterprises and large enterprises like Darden and Unilever in the work around social impact and social entrepreneurship. Anuj, I loved the word that John used, the catalyst. So I'm going to use that word again and asking you the same question. What got you started? What was your catalyst to think about impact investing?
Right. Thanks a lot. First of all, it's such a pleasure to be here. So for me, it was a kind of a thing which was much more a larger intersection of different things which were culminated in terms of how I got into impact investing. So coming out from a small community and small town in an emerging economy, you make yourself big in the international market, but you realize that you are not able to do enough for the communities you are belonging from. And that quest, which I kind of developed further and further while I was working with big corporates in billions of dollars of M&A, took me back to the place which I started all about. And that was a time where I realized that we have lots of inequalities. At the same time, very few people actually have the resources, I will say also the mindset and also the network to make a difference. So we have a choice. So either we make a constructive choice or we still keep making money and be selfish. And in that side, having a sense of purpose and a sense of social return kind of tweaked me into this sector. And what I am today, if I say, whether it is traveling to this place in the northern part of India, where internet was blocked for almost 2 years. And I'm the first person privately coming and trying to invest in this part of the world by itself is a transformative thing. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of galvanized the whole communities around. So that's the whole narrative, I can say.
Wow. Thanks, Anuj. And I love the connection that you're making with what John said about these very complex, what we call wicked problems, right, that impact our local communities as well as the international communities. And when I teach social entrepreneurship and impact investing, I talk a lot about the word that you use, is that we have choices, right? We have choices as consumers, we have choices as investors. And so making that choice is really important, right? And that's where it kind of all starts. So I'm really glad that you mentioned that. I want to stay with you for a moment, Anuj, and so you've given us a little bit of the impetus or the catalyst for how you got started. Could I ask how that motivation resulted in Alistar Impact, and maybe some background and the focus of the work that you're now doing at Alistar?
Right. Thanks a lot. So here, first of all, the name of this, my entity is the name of my grandparents' village, which primarily is also a place which nobody want to go because everybody has migrated out. And the only reason people know is because there is a small fest which happens there, and that's the only resonating thing. So changing the name was also to kind of resonate that you want to go back to the roots. And roots is not just with respect to your family roots, but also to the core issues which as a society we are resonating with. And if you are not resonating or addressing these issues, they are going to haunt us as all together. So to give a kind of another analogy here, there's an entity which I had invested in, and this is based out of a conflict zone where none of the investors actually decided to invest in. And the moment I came, and not just came, I'm saying as an entity, we kind of supported them, not just with money, but also with regulations with respect to finance knowledge, and also with structuring things. It started getting as a catalyst. And that's where it's a great word which you specified, and that resonates with the overall thing that we all are talking. Social sector is much more than financing, much more than the kind of specific thing which people see as a return, but is a culmination of various forces which takes the social enterprise to change the whole local ecosystem or a larger ecosystem in a transformative manner.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. I love the way you use that cumulative, right? So when we're looking at the work that the entrepreneurs are doing, and we do have some entrepreneurs online with us today, we have students online with us today, as well as professors. So helping them to see that the impact happens through cumulative steps, right? And that each step matters in that movement toward change and impact. So thank you so much, Anuj. John, I want to bring us back to Orlando for a second, because a lot of folks maybe from emerging markets wonder why we need impact investing and why we need social enterprise in these wicked problems in a developed market like the United States. So maybe you could tell us a little bit of the background of Entrepreneurs in Action and how you make investment decisions toward the social and environmental impact in a developed market like the United States and Orlando.
Yeah, I guess the reason I sort of chuckle is, as everybody knows, globally, the United States is certainly not without its issues and challenges. And so there are many problems we have here. And just to name one, in Central Florida, because we have such a dependence on hospitality businesses, we have a low income labor market, and housing is just a massive issue for us, where we have people working at Disney living out of cars because they can't afford local housing. So yeah, so it is, and we have a large homelessness issue. I think, unfortunately, these intractable social issues are global, and we all have to address them. A little bit about Entrepreneurs in Actions and how we make impact decisions. I think you have to go back to the social accelerator that we started, Rally, and that we're trying to connect entrepreneurs with resources and funding and mentors to help build their ideas, and really to create, whether it's nonprofit or for-profit, sustainable business models. That's what we're really trying to do, is get these businesses up and running and be able to be sustainable and support whatever their theory of change is. And the Rally Accelerator extensively uses the Lean Social Canvas, and I'm sure Mary has introduced that to many people, and we find it quite effective. Entrepreneurs in Action is basically experienced business leaders and entrepreneurs that have come together to actually support social enterprises and entrepreneurs in the Central Florida area. And really, the way we make investment decisions is exactly what you'd think for any early stage angel or venture capital group. We basically look at who we're betting on, what's the team, the market landscape, the size of that opportunity. Do they have differentiating technologies? And most of these companies will have a technology, that platform that they're building on. Go to market considerations, terms, the size, evaluation, investor rights, and then of course we do due diligence, like everybody must. So trust but verify. We also look at post-investment involvement and what that would mean for us. So it's pretty standard. I think a must-have would be, what social metric are you trying to impact, and how measurable and impactful is it? And of course, that gets back to the social change. So there's no magic, sauce for this. It's really the basic due diligence of any investment, especially at the early stage level.
Okay, wonderful. And I want to reiterate two terms that both Anuj used and you just used, John. which is this idea of the ecosystem. So for entrepreneurship and for social entrepreneurship and social impact to happen, right, we don't just need a bunch of entrepreneurs. We need an entire network or ecosystem of investors, of workers for those entrepreneurial and small businesses. So I think, especially for our students out there, right, many of you want to be entrepreneurs, but some of you want to work in the space of entrepreneurship. So not everyone has to be an entrepreneur. We need investors like John. We need financial background and managerial expertise like Anuj has. So I think that's really important to emphasize that ecosystem, and then to measure, to think about the social metrics of that. And before I go to a question for you, Anuj, I again want to give some context to something that John mentioned, because we have an audience from the United States and from India. I think this is very important. So where John and I are located in Orlando, Florida, is where Disney World is. So our #1 driver of the economy in Orlando is tourism. So we have actually one of the world's largest tourist attractions, right, in Disney World and Universal and many of our change makers have visited those places when they came to see us in Orlando. And so the workers that are working behind the scenes, whether cleaning the rooms or serving or what we call bussing the tables, they need to have a car to get there because we don't have very good public transportation. So they have to make a choice. Do I get a car or do I get an apartment? Do I get a hotel? You know, where do I live? And so because they need the mobility in their car, they make that decision and they say, I'm going to use the car to get to work, but I can't afford the housing, as John mentioned. So I'm going to live in my car as well, which is a little bit different, I believe, than my experience of what I've seen in India, right? A car seems like a luxury purchase, but here, if you don't have a car, it's quite impossible to get to work with great regularity. So I think that speaks to, Anuj, what you were saying is thinking back to the roots and thinking to the community and understanding what those problems are in that community that need to be addressed. Can I, and off that, Anuj, I'd like to kind of ask you a question. When you're looking at investments, and John gave us some of the business ideas around metrics, but is there a non-negotiable, right? Something that must be there for your organization, for Alistar Impact, to enter an agreement, an investment agreement with a social or with a social enterprise?
I will say,
Anuj, I'm not sure if we've lost you.
yes.
Oh, there. Oh, sorry, I wasn't expecting that. You're still muted though, Anuj.
Really
Thank you,
sorry.
sir.
Yeah. So I'm in a place where internet was shut down for 2 years. So coming and doing some kind of a, like I will say, social entrepreneurship by itself is a big challenge. But I'm very happy and proud that I'm here. So a couple of things which are non-negotiable, if you see as a spectrum of impact investing. First is the intent of the social entrepreneur. What kind of problems they are trying to solve, and whether that specific problem is genuine or it is a greenwashing, if we put it like that. And for that specific thing to understand, it is very good to understand how the entrepreneur is responding to the social causes on the ground. And that makes the second part, which is non-negotiable, is how the social entrepreneur work is affecting the communities at large, whether it is the local one or it is a larger geography, which could be regional, or it could be international as well. So that kind of aspects are first thing. And second is the non-negotiable thing, if we put it like, is the intent overall as well, and what kind of background they come from. And background is not for with respect to the qualifications, which are important, but the background is what kind of a specific motive they have to start that social enterprise.
Excellent. I love that. As you say, it's not about a formal education background, but intent matters. And actually, in the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, India ranks #1 among the countries asked of the reason for starting a business is to make a difference in the community. So that aligns really well, and that you're asking folks to articulate that right at the beginning for an investment really makes sense. I want to ask you one more question, Anuj, before I go back to John, because you mentioned this idea of the community effect. John mentioned social metrics. What do you see as the biggest challenge faced by Indian impact investors today? And what do you see as some of the biggest opportunities?
So like the immediate biggest challenge is how to get an exit. It's very difficult. Okay, that's the very, very quick thing if I put it like this. But that's an opportunity as well. The reason is COVID has actually accelerated the much more rational behind why a social enterprise needs to exist. So if I am in Europe now, the narratives is either you are social or you are anti-social. That's the narrative which is building it. And that is a very amazing thing to talk. So here in India, or not just India, whole of South Asia, more and more big corporates are also shifting towards CSR. They are shifting towards social ethical businesses, ESG, and other things which they never thought that it will be relevant. So the more the relevance of this starts in, the more importance of having a social entrepreneurship in this region becomes. And that's where I feel the more people coming into it, even the investors, the exits will going to happen as well.
Good. Before I leave Anuj and ask John the next question, I just want to make a few definitions or clarifications of the terms that you've used. So the first one, ESG, if anyone online doesn't understand that, I want to encourage you to go to our YouTube page and watch the video from last week where Professor Koray Simsak really explained very well what is ESG and the type of investment for entrepreneurship, social, and governance issues. But you also used a term, Anuj, called greenwash. I'm not sure that our audience is particularly familiar with that. Can I ask you to just explain what you mean by that?
Absolutely. So greenwashing is where the social cause is not the intent, but it is just a specific presentation mode, how you're projecting it. So it's very important to differentiate whether the intent is true or it is just fabricated to suit an investor side.
Okay, great. And then the last one, you mentioned an exit. So again, that might be something, what does that mean? I'm planning for an exit. And I know, John, we can come back to you and what an exit might look like in the US, but let me ask Anuj to define that, and then we'll go over to John.
So exit in terms of this ecosystem is like if I'm investing in X dollar, then I should exit at least after 5 years or 7 years or 3 years, whatever we are defining. And that needs to have some kind of a social return coming in. But to do that, in the current ecosystem, it is difficult. But as the ecosystem is developing faster, it's iterating, and it is trying to tell the people at large that this is the ecosystem you have to support. The exits are going to become much more realistic as well. That means you will find a way the social enterprises could get a strategic investor, or they can get into an IPO, maybe that's a more bullish thing, or there could be some kind of a corporate connect which may happen. And that's how, as an investor, you'll get the returns as well.
Excellent. I love this connection between the hard finance terminology and decisions together with the social impact and metrics. John, I'm going to come back to you because Anuj mentioned something about, the ecosystem is developing. And I know the work that you have been doing in Orlando with the Entrepreneurs in Action and with Rally, right? We are developing that ecosystem. So I wonder if you can tell us about a little more about the infrastructure and the ecosystem of social entrepreneurs here in Orlando and how that's looking and how that evolves. And I hope that we can transfer knowledge and experiences across these two contexts.
Yeah, well, any initiative starts sort of with a vision and a big idea, and a bunch of us came together and really talked about what we wanted for Central Florida. And the vision was for Central Florida to become the hub of social entrepreneurship for the United States and also have obviously global impacts. Now that is obviously a big vision that takes a lot of work, but as we all know, 1,000-mile journey starts with the first step, and so we've taken the first step. And so with that vision, I think what you can talk about are some of the wins we've had. Obviously, just even getting the Rally Accelerator going, Rollins was instrumental in that, as was the city of Orlando, the county of Orange, which is the county we sit in, and some of the local corporations, as well as a bunch of what we call rally makers, which are individuals who actually write checks to help fund that initiative. And so that's really taken off, and we have attracted social entrepreneurs from around the globe, primarily Central Florida, but extensively from the United States, from Canada. We've seen some from Asia as well. So we're very excited about that. We've also been able to attract capital. So with the small fund that we started, and again, these are very early stage investments. So we're talking about $25,000 to $100,000 investments in these early stage companies. Some are pre-revenue, some have 1 to 2 employees. And so we're talking at very, very early seed money. But we've had some really good companies come out of there. One called EcoSpheres, which utilizes NASA technology for to simplify it, water for purification. Squiggle Park, which is a education tech company. It actually helps with literacy. So math is pretty easy to write programming for in terms of learning. English skills are very, very difficult to write programming for, and that's what they're tackling. And so there's some really interesting companies that are starting to emerge that we really feel good about. And the biggest challenge, of course, is going to be ongoing, keeping that momentum going. How do we continue to attract really interesting talent here, and then the capital to really support? It's not an easy process, but we're proud of where we've gotten to, but we have a lot further to go.
Yeah, I loved your analogy that the journey, no matter how long the journey is, it can't start without that first step. So that's that risk taking that is important. I wonder, John, I know most of your work, as Dr. Banerjee shared, has happened in the US and in Europe, but do you have any ideas or thoughts that you want to share of maybe how the situation in the US might be different than India, or would you like to pass that over to Anuj and see if he has some thoughts?
I think that would be a pass, because unfortunately I am not very well educated about the other than what I read and and listen to, but I have no direct experience in India.
So awesome, and I love that you said that, because part of what Global Links Initiative and GLIIF in general does is loves to create connections. So the fact that you're online with Anuj, who does have this experience across both areas. So Anuj, I'm going to pass over to you and say, based on your experience in these two countries, hearing what John has said about the firms that he has invested in, like Squiggle Park and like EcoSpheres, and we could name several others, what do you see as some of the similarities and differences in impact investing in the US and in India?
So I actually was fortunate to work in both geographies, just to give a sense. And in this, one of the most amazing thing, if I kind of take it back, let's say 12 years or 15 years, is that one of the most initial support in impact investing in India was actually through one of the best US investors who had started doing this thing in US, like Omedea Network, Michael and Susan Dent Foundation, Lemelson Foundation, various others. And they took the initial bet to come into a geography which they were actually not very comfortable with, but with a clear intent that this social mission needs to be spreading further beyond US. And in that they had learnings as well. And one of the most amazing thing, if I say, Omedea Network and MSDF and others kind of brought along is the kind of broader vision and also the guidelines. And that guidelines allowed other impact investors to kind of formulate the thesis to take it to the next level.
I love that combination of vision, which John is also mentioning, but also the guidelines, right? We talk a lot about what is the difference between a plan and a dream is often those guidelines. So bringing the vision or the dream, but having that together with the guidelines, I think is really important. I just want to think, often we talk about successes. So you mentioned one of the successes and the crossover, Anuj, but I think we can also learn, and we are encouraging the next generation of entrepreneurs to think about taking risk, and risk brings failure. So I think sometimes it's helpful for us to just share a little bit of a failure that we've experienced and how and what happened post that quote unquote failure, how you pivoted to create something new. So John, let me start with you, and Anuj, you be thinking about one because you're a very successful guy, so you might have to dig deep for a failure. But John, can you think of anything that didn't work out as planned, might call it a failure or not quite the success that you've learned from that you can share with us?
Is this a philosophical question about my life in general, or is this specific to entrepreneurship? There's a litany of failures, of course. I'll assume that it's related to social entrepreneurship.
Thank you. Yes, that's good.
Well, I mean, to your point, failure, I think when you get into this business, failure is just, you have to accept that it's going to be more often than not. If you read all the statistics about what we'll call angel investing, and there are a lot of models for angel investing, whether you do it individually or fund or form LLCs, you're going to probably have, of 10 investments on average, or you're going to have 6 to 7 that are going to fail. I mean, so it's absolutely going to be that way. And actually, if you have 2 to 3 that do well, you're actually probably hitting better than most. And I think what you have to do from the investment side is reflect on why the investment did not work out. And it usually comes back to a few things. One is the leadership team did not have the depth, the experience, or the understanding that you may have thought they had. 2 is the idea sounded great on paper, and Anuj, this might be what you mean by greenwashing, but there wasn't any depth to it. And then there wasn't, it sounded great, but the actual practicality of the solution was not reachable. And then the other is that, you have to pivot, you have to adapt, and some entrepreneurs aren't able to do that. And it's very tough to look in the mirror and reflect and say, all right, I've gotten it this far, how do we continue to progress? And without looking to a village, right? Without looking to the ecosystem, without asking for help, it becomes very difficult. Entrepreneurs, in my opinion, and I don't consider myself one, have towering strengths and unbelievable capabilities and passion and drive. But with that comes some opportunities as well, and there are some blind spots. And that's why I think you need mentors, and you need people you can really work with to say, hey, how about this? Or these are some other things you should consider. So yeah, so I think failure, you have to accept it as part of the process. There are going to be failures. What I admire really about entrepreneurs is how they're just able to dust themselves off and say, you know what, this is too important to let failure stop me. I'm going after it. I just have to try something different.
Excellent. Thank you. Anuj, anything you want to share with that?
Yeah, so especially in India and nearby geographies, failure is actually not a positive thing. And that kind of is a very difficult thing for budding entrepreneurs who are listening here. But at the same time, if we see, like if you are an entrepreneur, there are 2 things you do. Either you succeed or you learn. If that is the approach, that is good. But at the same time, the ecosystem is pretty harsh. And that's where impact investing becomes such an important, crucial crucible here, a catalyst. And impact investing also allows you to have more patience. It also allows a certain room of social success, which might culminate into like I will say, formal so-called financial success, which is actually still a relevant thing. But at the same time, you have a bigger tolerance level. Now, coming into the overall, like I will say, statistics, because I've been now in this sector for more than a decade, that 8 in 10 social enterprises closed down in 3 years. So that means it's not easy as well. But at the same time, the positive side is the whole thing. The ecosystem is developing as fast as the enterprise is getting closed. And the fact that we are talking means we are multiplying the ecosystem as well. And that is the most important thing. And in that, one of the important thing to have a like a kind of a balancing approach is a peer groups. And the peer group of people who may have so-called failed or have closed down, but they still come back to allow some of the budding entrepreneurs to learn from their things and iterate.
I like that you took that right straight on, Anuj, by saying that failure, and I keep wanting to do what Americans do of put air quotes around that, right? What is seen by some as failure, right, has different impacts in different cultures. And so interestingly, if I go back to the research from the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, I mentioned that Indians rank top in wanting to start a business to positively impact their community. They also rank #1 among the countries surveyed of fear of failure. And that's a really difficult combination for an entrepreneur, right? Because as John said, one of the things an entrepreneur requires, and we admire for them, is the ability to pick themselves up, right? When something didn't work as initially planned, and continue to realize the importance of solving that social issue. I want to turn over, we have a few minutes for Q&A, and we've gotten a few questions that have come in on the chat box. So let me read one of those questions, if I may. It's from Anuj Sharma, and they ask, is there any kind of screening that is done across the range of environmental, social, and governmental factors when you look at investing in a portfolio? Let me repeat that question just one more time. Is there a kind of screening that is done across a range of environmental, social, and government factors that help you determine the investments in your portfolio? So Anuj, can we start with you and then go to John?
Sure. So for me, like it is, I'm very clear in terms of the social enterprises that I invest in. My criteria are very clear that it needs to have some kind of a grassroots initiative supported causes, which I'm very closely resonating with, and also the social returns that needs to combine with the sustainability part. If these parts are there, I'm game for it. I would like to experiment. I would like to talk to them.
Okay, John, do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I would be in full agreement. I think one of the real challenges is how do you metric the social impact, right? It's not easy. And one of the things that the Rally Accelerator that we have spends an inordinate amount of time on is really trying to figure out the data to be able to measure impact. It's not easy. We're trying to work with models and everything else. But many times the idea of I'm going to solve X can't be metric, and therefore you have to figure out what the real theory of change is and apply it. So not easy, but that's critical for a social entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and actually the GLIIF team had a very good meeting, John, with the company that you use to do some of that social metric, right? The basal data. So we met and chatted.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, because that is a difficult thing to figure out what is social impact. And also sometimes we can measure financial return faster than social or environmental return because of the complexities that come about in the social and the environmental level.
And that just a comment, we're working with one group now, which is not an atypical issue, and that is that the product, which would have a social metric, seems to be attracting households of wealth more than perhaps those who need it. So the need is across all demographic or household income groups, but those that can afford it are quote, quote, wealthy. And so that brings up an interesting dynamic in terms of how you get that product to operate the same way to lower income households. And that's very typical of some of the social metric definitions that you have to go through.
Mm-hmm. That's helpful. Anuj, did you want to comment on that at all, what John was just mentioning? Because it makes me think of base of the pyramid work, but I'm not sure if you want to comment on that at all.
Yeah, so it's very relevant what John is saying. And if I kind of take it to the next level, like many times we have a kind of a also some kind of conundrum, like how we kind of choose between the social messaging which is there on the ground in terms of the underserved population, the kind of definitions which are there. But at the same time, underserved population could be in different manners. It's not just the income level. It could also be constrained in terms of resources. As I'm saying, like I'm in this geography which is devoid of even basic democracy of connecting to the outside world. So we are talking a very difficult challenge, but again, this part is slightly challenging, which I'm sitting right now. Let's take, we go to, let's take Africa, where there could be a different kind of a challenge. Or let's say if we go to Myanmar, where there is a regime change just recently. So the challenges keeps rotating. At the same time, if we have the right kind of intent, we can make a difference. And the reason I mentioned Myanmar is like, because this is one of the places like I really like. I worked there and I was kind of advising for some kind of large funds as well. And then suddenly this regime change has kind of made the social entrepreneurs devoid of certain things. But at the same time, it has created an opportunity as well, as I say, where they have to find a way to iterate and try to find and sustain for a slightly longer period.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Great. Wow. And I know that some of our professors on the line, Dr. Banerjee, another one of our GLIIF professors who we'll hear from it a little bit, Dr. Arijita Dutta, have also done research in Myanmar. So I know there is a concern for the entrepreneurs in that country right now. As we think about social and environmental issues and business, sometimes our right brain and our left brain operate differently. In other words, the business side, right, is all one side of our brain, and it's very emotionless, we're sometimes taught. And social can sometimes be an emotional element. So one of our attendees, I'm not even going to try to pronounce your name, I'm sorry, Samantha is her last name, asked, is there an emotion element when you choose a social enterprise? Or is it all that hard, cold fact of business? John, you want to start us with that?
Well, having read Thinking Fast and Slow, it's hard to keep the emotion out of things and the intuition. Having said that, I think the emotion, and this is certainly disputable, but I think the emotion actually plays more on the side of the entrepreneur than the investors. And that is that the entrepreneurs fall in love with the social cause or whatever, and then have trouble backing away from that emotion to really make some hardcore decisions about their business models and what they're actually trying to accomplish and what they can accomplish. And so I would say it's probably on the side of the entrepreneur more so than on the side of the investor, who usually has a group of investors looking at things and can probably separate some of those attributes.
Mm-hmm. Anuj, do you have a thought there?
Yeah, so one side, obviously, it's you need to be financially savvy when you are trying to understand whether the investing will make money or not. Yes, but if I don't have empathy, I may not be able to go to the next level. So it's kind of a mixed bag. If I put it like this, it needs to marry in, and that is the reason I'm in this sector.
Yes, I'm so glad you brought up the word empathy, because, and our change makers that are online with us will know, one of the first things that we talk about and it's human-centered design thinking and the space of social entrepreneurship is that empathy. And we actually challenge the idea of separating that business side from that emotion side. And we say, what if that invisible hand of Adam Smith had a second hand, and that second hand, which he does have two hands, actually looks at the emotion and the social and the altruistic impact of the investments that we're making. And John, you reminded me when you were saying about the entrepreneur and their emotion. Just yesterday, we had an entrepreneur, a social entrepreneur here locally in one of my classes, and his advice was, don't fall in love with your solution, fall in love with the problem. And that will keep you motivated. If you fall in love with your own solution, it's very difficult to pivot. But if you fall in love with the idea of solving the problem, you will continue through those hard times. And that reminded me of exactly what you were saying there. I want to also draw the attention of our audience to the chat box that Sanchari has posted the links for Alistar Impact and for Rally. I want to double check that Rally website when I have a moment. I'm not 100% sure that's the correct one, Sanchari, but I want to come back to the questions because we only have about 5 minutes, and I know we want to have a somewhat formal close. So I want to ask each of you, John and Anuj, knowing we have this mixed audience of students, of professors, of entrepreneurs and investors, I want to ask you to think about some words that you would like to leave them with. And whether those are words of encouragement or, to your point, Anuj, the words that can help them to deal with that fear element in India, the fear of failure. So let me start with you, John, and say, what advice would you give to this mixed audience if they were considering becoming involved in impact investing? What encouragement, what words might you give them?
Yeah, well, it certainly wouldn't be disencouragement. It will certainly be encouragement. I think it takes fortitude and some bravery to do this. There are so many challenging issues in this world, and it ranges from climate to social justice to everything. And so there's no shortage of challenges, and I don't think it matters what the boundaries of a country are. I think there's so many international issues as well. I would say, think problem solution, not that you have to fall in love with the solution, but I think you have to be thinking that way. Is there a problem? Can we find a solution? How you define that problem is really important. I think if you're considering yourself a social entrepreneur and you're looking for potential investment, then you have to be talking about business opportunity and whether there's a business or revenue opportunity within the problem solution. And then I think you have to really look in the mirror and say, will this make a difference? Will it really make a difference, or am I just being theoretical about it? And we've seen in the early stages a lot of theories that are great, but the pragmatism lacks. Mm-hmm. I think the other thing is it something that really matters to you? Is there a personal connection, and can you tell a personal story about it? And if you can, I think that's really important. And many of the greatest social entrepreneurs that I've come across have a personal connection somehow, and it's really dramatic. And then I think you have to set time-related goals and revisit them often during the journey. I think time can get away from you really quickly, and I think you just have to be very disciplined in how you do this. But we need social entrepreneurs. We need people who want to make a difference. And so I admire everybody who tries to do that. It's just not easy. My sister runs a nonprofit, and I'm just amazed at what she deals with and how she does it and what she accomplishes. And it's really something to watch.
Excellent. Thank you, John. Anuj?
Yeah, so I will say, I'm fascinated with the amazing learnings I actually get every day while in this sector. And one of the reasons, if I put it like this, it is happening is because the kind of great change makers we keep finding. And it's a kind of I will say it's a blessing. And change makers are coming from across the globe, I would say. So in India, I'm blessed with having so many expats who leave their comfort and they come to India and remote places and they start a social enterprise. The reason is they want to make a difference, not just in the place they are born in, but they come to a place which they find resonating causes they can help with and take it to the next level. Mm-hmm. So a few things which I feel are very, very crucial for budding social entrepreneurs. One is a narrative that has to be super strong, clear, and it needs to be simplified. And second is your passion cannot be copied. So don't worry. If you find competition, if you find like-minded copycats, don't worry. Social entrepreneurs are all about passion. It's about the narrative. Bring it together. And you will also get like-minded investors as well. Now, things are evolving faster. We are a connected world as well as a community. And I think as a one line, if somebody want to ask me, bold ideas, bold initiatives require equally positive, strong intent to support and back up. And I think that's what we are trying to do here.
Okay, great. I think Dr. Banerjee, you had one word to say, and then you will turn it over to Dr. Arijita Dutta.
I was so impressed by what Anuj said, and I really want to share this with the audience, that in India, we have this feeling of someone is imitating me. And I look at that as they must have found something good in what I did, and that is why they too want to do it. So someone imitating is not to be considered bad in any way, which means when you have done something good and someone's imitating you, we have definitely must done something good. So that takes us forward for all students. So share our ideas and disseminate what you have learned. There is no need to keep a secret. We will all gain from what we are learning. So with this, I am learning this from Anuj, that I want to reinforce my idea. And over to Dr. Arijita Datta, who's a core team member of Global Links Impact Investment Foundation Forum. And she will just conclude this session. She has her video off today, so we see her as CU Economics. She's changed her name, right? Arijita Datta.
Thank you, Professor Banerjee. It was really a kind of a learning 1 hour that is motivating, and also it's a kind of a listening to the stories from 2 different geographies, but at the same time we find within this hour that how we resonate to each other and how we all resonate to the causes of the global issues that are coming up. And being a student of economics, starting the courses with the positive economics of neoclassical economics, where we put your money, you do not put your money there, the risk is high, or something like this. I grew up with learning these theories. But when I come into this forum, what I learned that financing and social entrepreneurship can go hand in hand. This is possibly the first thing that we need to understand, learn, not only theoretically, but also in the actual empirics and in our actual experience. And what was very interesting to find that the ecosystem for the impact investment that is getting extended in both types of countries. It's sometimes we find the literature that we were looking at as a part of the GLIIF research group, that there were many literature which is associated with the developed countries, and particularly the US and Europe. But we were thinking that, what about India? What about the other developing countries? So it was a kind of a reassuring for us, and particularly for those entrepreneurs who are listening to this session, that that ecosystem in these developing countries is also extending. And we understand, as it was pointed out, that the journey is definitely long, but as uh, Professor Dato-on commented, that however long the journey is, one has to take the baby steps towards that. And it is something like that. It is a proverb that got reminded, is that the failure is the pillar of the success. So for the entrepreneurs who think that there was one failure, what the message for them was that do not stop here. Do not stop here, and there is a long way to go, and it is your empathy, it is your understanding of the entire situation, your emotion, that can change the world in a big way. So it was a kind of fascinating session that I listened. I am sure that those who also listened to would not only feel empowered, but also happy with this session. So that's the kind of a summing up that came to my mind. I hand it over to Surabhi for the request for the snapshot. They will be taking some photos. So it's over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. I would